Hello, I'm Kevin Kenny. This is the Build Series live in New York City. We're about to be joined by a couple of gentlemen who just wrapped a big summer tour a few weeks back, and their new album, Superbloom, is out and available everywhere now. Please, let's give a round of applause for Ra Ra Riot. What's going on, fellas?
Not too much.
Do you like the pillows they give us? Totally off topic, random thing.
Yeah.
Adjusting mind.
I love it, actually.
You know,
As soon as I sat down,
I'm into
this was very comfortable.
Yeah, helps with posture, I've been told.
You know.
Yeah, I need it.
Totally. All right. Well, let's talk about the music aside from the pillows. You guys have the new album Superbloom out right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's been out all 3 days, so thank you very much for taking the time the
Yeah.
first week of release to stop by Build. But this term, right? It comes from. Explain this phenomenon that happened in the desert, and like you could see it from space. It sounds crazy. I don't know where I was when this was big news, but explain the name.
Yeah, well, yeah, you're right. It was this phenomenon that happens in like the Southern California kind of desert area, I guess, every now and then. And a few years ago, it was supposed to be a particularly big one. At the time when we were making the record, you know, like the title's always sort of the last thing you figure out. In
Really?
retrospect.
Always been that way?
Yeah. As you're making the album, it's just like song by song. You don't really know what the themes are going to be until it's done and you have the chance to, like, you know, regard it as a group kind of. But we were aware of when we were actually going down to LA to record the song Flowers with Rostam. It was right around the time the Superbloom was happening. And we tried to go see it. At least I did. We drove down there and we got there and it was completely dead. We had missed it by like a few days, but still the spirit of the Superbloom
Right.
persevered, I guess. But yeah, so anyway, it's sort of, you know, there was a lot of like references to like flowers and growth and I don't know, psychedelia, all the kinds of stuff on the album. And we thought, you know, it kind of was just a fitting theme.
Well, the Superbloom, right? It's like flowers growing in like this dry wasteland, right?
Right, yeah.
So what was the proverbial dry wasteland for you guys heading into this record? Or am I misunderstanding the analogy a little bit?
No. That's
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe there wasn't quite a dry wasteland that we started from, but I think more like there was just so much happening all at once. That's kind of what we were thinking about. Like, there's a lot of colorful stuff. There's like, you know, bit crushing. There's psychedelic elements. There's like, there's a little bit of like a desert vibe to some of the songs, the lyrical stuff a little bit. So that I think was kind of what we were thinking. It did kind of come at a really prolific time for us. Like, you know, we started from the most amount of material and narrowed it down more than we usually do, which was really cool. But yeah, I think we kind of thought that like this kind of big, this big prolific writing moment for us was kind of like encapsulated in a Superbloom.
Do you think the volume of work you had heading into this record was a byproduct of you guys being more open to maybe the pop side of things? Maybe songs you would have.
So, well, it's funny too because going into this record, we wanted to embrace this new paradigm of like streaming and stuff, where we were like, we're only gonna record 2 or 3 songs at a time, release singles, do smaller tours, because you know, we don't want to go away for like a year, work on a record, and then tour for like 2 years. But then, so we gave ourselves that sort of freedom a little bit, and also we had toured a lot on our last cycle, so we wanted some time off, you know, to sort of reset. And I think both of those decisions put us in a position to be more creative and feel better. So before we knew it, we actually had way more songs than we expected to. And then the EP, the single grew into an EP, grew into maybe 2 EPs, and then we were like, actually, we have enough for like at least 1 full-length record now. So yeah, I think we put ourselves in a good like headspace to be more productive, for sure.
What is the takeaway or one of the biggest takeaways from this streaming age that we're now just, you know, totally in as artists? Of course, like we have takeaways as consumers and music fans, but is it sort of like, you know, out of sight, out of mind, you just got to keep going and keep providing content?
Well, yeah, we definitely had the longest like lead-in of any record we've ever released with like, you know, the first thing we released from this record was last, I don't know, November, October, something like that. And just Friday was, you know, so that's almost, 10 months or something of, you know, a single every month or 2 months or something. So, you know, to get people's attention and make sure that the record is like a big thing at the end rather than just like the, one moment, and then you're just like kind of dying from there. You have this kind of expectations, and all these like moments that you build into the story rather than just throwing out a record. At least for us, that's like how we felt about it.
Because I feel like back in the day, right, you would lead with an album, and then you'd almost get to know that album through singles, but it's almost in reverse now. Do you prefer it? Do you have an opinion? Is it just music at the end of the day?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of people do it differently. Still, people, make a record and they'll release it that week or something just because you can, and that's fun to do. But for us, I think it was more, it took us 2.5 years to finish everything. We kind of finished Bad to Worse, actually, the song we just listened to, pretty much at the same time that first song came out. So it's like it was a long process making it, and we felt like in order to bring everything together, make it feel like the same band, the same record, we had to kind of tell the story in a longer amount of time.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say, too, it's funny because every time we've been around long enough now, we've seen, like, several different paradigms in the industry.
Right.
And, like, when our first album came out, it leaked. Remember when, that would happen?
Leaks are a
like
thing,
somebody, like, burned a copy of, like, the master CD, and it leaked, and we were freaking out because we thought it was going to destroy the whole cycle. And then by the time our second or third album came out, we leaked it ourselves. Like, the leak was, like, part of the...
Totally.
Of like the plan, the release plan. So like our manager was like, then we'll leak the album on this day. We're like, okay, whatever. I don't know how anything works, And now, now it's just, at first artists had sort of a pushback with Spotify or like with other streaming platforms just because it just felt like unfair or something. I don't know. But now it's like, they're like the driving force behind the whole industry, and now it's like we have great partnerships with a lot of streaming platforms and things like that. So it's different every time we make a record. So we're just sort of going along with it.
Is it comforting at all? Because it feels like from my side of things that this sort of like age of disruption, although like innovation is isn't going anywhere, it feels like things have leveled out a little bit, and we've understood these platforms now, and it feels like maybe there's a better understanding of how everything works and the role of everything, as opposed to like thinking Spotify's the enemy or thinking this way or that way. Does it feel like that for you guys?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think we've always been like a relatively pro Spotify or stream, whatever it is, group of people. I think because like Matt said, our first record leaked, and that was a whole month of people listening to the record that we had. Not only did we not make any money from it, but we also couldn't really tell how many people it was. We couldn't track. It's like in this age of tracking information is like a value in and of itself. That's a conversation we should have separately. But for us, being able to like see how many people are listening to it rather than just like it's just gone into the the nebulous space between computers. So. I think we appreciate like where it's at right now, and that it could be worse. So
and this release felt like a very traditional release. So it's kind of like back to normal now. Where like we had the long lead date, we had like several singles come out, and then the album came out on the day it was supposed to come out. It was very like normal and fine. Yeah.
It's funny. There's some irony to be had. This building used to be a Tower Records, and I just feel like we've reached a point now where it's like, we finally understand Apple Music. These are all just retailers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, totally.
Yeah, it's funny because it's not like the technology isn't there to have a record leak anymore. We all have the same machines or better, but it just doesn't happen. It's
may as well just leak it to Spotify, right?
Yeah.
So much has been said about sort of you guys leaning more into and being more open to these pop tendencies, right? That maybe formerly you wouldn't have, because if you think about like it's probably almost a dirty term 15 to 20 years ago, right? Of course, like the idea of selling out or anything like that has probably been obliterated by now. But give me a real life example of like a fork in the road in the studio where maybe you leaned into something that in the previous recordings you would have been like, no, that's not us. We can't do that. That's too pop. What's an example?
I think for this record, one example, well, just the first thing that came to mind was probably the keyboard solo in Bitter Conversation, which is track 6 or something. 5 or 6, I don't remember.
Somewhere in there.
It's like such a pop solo that I think maybe in the past we would have been like, we need to mess it up some way, or, you know, it needs to be less, you know, immediate or something. But it just kind of felt so good, and the rest of the song is also pretty poppy. So it kind of it made it easy to just be like, well, let's just go with it. You know, we have all these other like what we think of as like kind of punky songs on the record too. So having that other side of the, you know, the spectrum represented is cool.
Yeah, because it's funny. We in our minds, we always thought that we were like a pop band, or always trying to be a pop band, and like every record we made, we're like, oh, this is like so poppy. Oh my God, this is too poppy. And then like going back and listening to like 3 records ago, it's like, what were we thinking? Like this was going to be on the radio or something. But you know, we've always tried to, yeah, like you were saying, like temper our like, you know, more poppy sensibilities with like, you know, making it a little weirder, not to be like clever just because that's what we would do, you know, for better or for worse. So yeah, we've always been interested in like the weirder kind of more idiosyncratic stuff. We've always been interested in the really poppy stuff, but we've tried to combine it all over the years, which, you know, is fun in itself. But I think, yeah, this time around, we sort of honed in on each of those things a little bit more. And we're like, well, let's let the pop stuff, let's not bog it down with too much overthinking and cleverness. Let's not try to polish the rough stuff too much. Let's let those things like be what they want to be. And part of it too is like we did this record, we had so many different producers and collaborators and co-writers. So it wasn't like just doing, you know, 15 tracks with like the same people in the same room for like 6 weeks. So it was like a little bit here, a little bit there. So we were able to like approach each session with a lot more freedom and flexibility. Right. And working with, like you were saying, this keyboard solo with Dean wrote, Kieran and Dean, with these two producers. We did like 5 or 6 songs with in LA, and they were like really pop producers, and we had never really done that. We used to like overthinking everything, you know, just one line in a song could like put us, you know, into a holding pattern for like a few weeks. We're like, you know, it's not the perfect word, you know. But they just sat down. We sat down with like yellow legal pads, and they're like, okay, what's the song about? What rhymes with this? And we're just like, just cranking out lyrics. And totally. I think working like that was just like really, really inspiring too, and very different for us.
Did I read that you guys were there's a K-pop influence on this record? Yeah, I was surprised to hear that.
Yeah, I mean it's not huge.
Right. But where does it come from?
Those are Kieran and Dean, these guys that we were working with for a lot of this record. Were kind of into that and felt like it fit, and especially with the kind of digitally like bit crushed type effects that we use on a lot of the songs we did with them. Like you can hear it a lot in Dangerous. There's a moment where the whole kind of mix sounds like it gets crunched into like an early Nintendo or something. Yeah. It kind of just has this kind of different effect that, you know, we hadn't really used very much of in this way, I guess, in the past. So that was one way that it kind of manifested.
That's cool. Yeah. I want to just run through some of the tracks that I enjoy the most. I want to start with This Time of Year, where this started as a Christmas song. Somehow,
yes,
and then it morphed into like
this
like sort of like nostalgic, you know, anthem, if you will.
Yeah.
What was the turning point? Like, when did you realize, oh, you know what, this is not just a Christmas song. This is actually a song.
Well, I played it for a friend, and I was like, I have this idea for a Christmas song, and he was like, I think that's too good to be a Christmas song. You should just make it like a real song. And so I kind of changed some of the lyrics, and now it's like, you know, about, you know, being broke and flying out to see someone, an old friend or an old relationship or whatever. Yeah, it was just like, you know, maybe, I don't remember where the original keyboard part was inspired, but something like Stevie Wonder or like Thundercat or something like that. Right. Yeah, I just, actually, speaking of Kieran and Dean again, I played them this demo, and like immediately they were like, "Let's just do that song today." So we just like, that was like the first thing we started working on. But yeah, glad you like it.
Yeah, I don't know. And then you guys did an app for this, right? Wasn't there some cool thing where you could like soundtrack like photos of like your year?
Oh yes.
I mean, I'm going back now.
Yeah,
like, you know, like end of 2018, but yeah, that was cool. You know
cool,
what I mean?
thanks. Yeah, that was like, you know, one of these apps that's like, it compiles your most liked photos or something, or your on like Instagram or whatever,
Right.
and then,
And then it
just
soundtracks
like
to your
this time
song.
of year. Yeah,
That's tight.
yeah.
We got to get to the audience questions, but I wanted to ask you about one other song in here, Backroads, right? Which is
Oh, cool.
basically like, it sounds like encapsulates both of our weekends in high school, right? Of just kind of like driving around, you don't have anything to do.
Yeah.
It's great. I don't drive anymore because I'm here, but it's like,
Right.
it's a very nostalgic song. How often do you find, you know, if you go back to that song, right, you sort of started this idea, this emotion, and this, you try to capture, right, this time in your life where you're just free on the weekends, you're driving, you're discovering new music, right? It's really powerful. Do you build out the song from there? Like, how does the songwriting creative process work in a song like Backroads?
Well, that one started, I think, you know, it's sometimes it's just, it's hard to explain, I guess. Like, I made like an earlier version of that just on acoustic guitar, and the chorus lyrics just kind of they just came to me like that, and that was the main part of the song that we had finished first, and then, you know, we worked on the rest of it, and, you know, built it up like a, you know, Ra Ra Riot song should be, as we thought. And but yeah, I just remember thinking, like, you know, there's a lot of like driving themes in this record, and feeling like you're not always sure where you're going. You know, you're not always like driving to a specific place, but maybe you just kind of see the horizon, and you can kind of project what you want to see out there. And that's like, that was kind of the cool feeling I got, I think, when I first started writing that. And, you know, we finished it all together, but yeah.
That's awesome. Cool. Yeah, definitely want to dig. Let's get to the first fan question. It'll come from over here.
Hi. This seems like a very visual album, and I was wondering what your other visual or non-musical inspirations were for it.
Ooh, great question.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, this album, we've worked with the same designer on all the records, this guy, Chris Everhart. So we feel like he's been a part of our like visual identity the whole time. So it's nice, we've like grown together and we can communicate a lot. But this album was the first one we really tried to hone in on like a visual world ahead of time. So there's a lot of like Pinterest mood boards and sharing of ideas like that, which is really fun to, you know, get that going and not scrambling at the end, be like, what is this album supposed to look like, you know, that kind of thing. But as far as influences, yeah, I mean, Wes and I both are like visual artists, or, you know, try to be on the side. Like I studied painting in college, that's what I went to school for. So yeah, we, you know, always go into, you know, art museums on tour and things like that. And when I'm not on tour, sometimes I'm working at galleries here in Chelsea or upstate. So always trying to be like around art. And aside from that, we, you know, most of us in the band are avid readers too. So there's a lot of stuff, and we're always like all kinds of different stuff too: fiction, nonfiction, fantasy, sci-fi, whatever. So we're always like trading books, and we get a lot of inspiration from that kind of stuff too. And yeah, so it was nice to bring together the visual stuff, this like non-musical, the literature stuff, and but yeah, I mean, again, it's a hard question to answer because, you know, you're always have your filters like open, and you got to let everything come in, and then it's like got to be like a gathering process, and then at the end of the day, you see like what's like sticking up there, and then just go for that.
Yeah. Just thinking about the mood board we made, like there was a lot of like pixel art stuff. There was some like Hasui Kawase paintings, right? And this movie Belladonna of Sadness. That was like a big visual inspiration.
Yeah, a lot of
Song on the record, Belladonna.
Yeah, that was like, that came from that movie. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of like movie posters for like old like
vintage
spaghetti
movie
westerns,
posters,
stuff like that. Yeah, a lot of Formula One stuff,
Right,
old
yeah.
like Japanese car like ads.
Yeah.
Yeah, a whole bunch of stuff. Bridget Riley paintings. She's cool, very visual stuff.
Sweet. Great question. We have time for one more.
Hi. I have a question from our website, buildseries.com. Somebody would like to know, which songs were you most excited for fans to hear and why?
Great.
I am still the most excited for people to hear Endless Pain, Endless Joy. It was like one of the most fun ones to record and write, and it's probably the most different song from the rest of our catalog that we were putting out. So
Yeah, I'd probably say the same one too. Yeah, because when we all made that together, we were like, oh, this was fun. What are people gonna think? And then that one was, when we were coming up with the sequence of the album, we weren't quite sure where to put it because it was sort of a balancing act with all the different kinds of styles on it. But we tried to place it for like maximum impact. So we had these two kind of fuzzed out, like California-y songs, for lack of a better term, that we did with Rostam. So they had that kind of like sonic world. And then the third song was Belladonna, which is like a bigger, more like U2-y. So it's like sort of ramping up like this. And then we decided to put it in track 4, where like it's sort of like a crazy like gut punch, like out of nowhere. So yeah, we were kind of, and we hadn't really talked about that song too much ahead of time. So we were like kind of excited for people to like, get the record, play it, and then get to track 4 and have this kind of like surprise and see if they were into it or not. But yeah.
Great question. Website. All right, guys, we're unfortunately out of time. But again, the new record, Superbloom, is out and available everywhere now. We encourage you to check it out. And one more time for Ra Ra Riot, everybody.
thank you.